It seems that Kyle Rittenhouse is actually winning. Now I'm surprised. I'd been saying for a long time that I felt that the jurors were going to be too weak, and maybe that will still be the case. I didn't trust the judge to do the right thing. That is absolutely wrong. People are saying this judge is very based. And based on the way things are going in this trial, it really does seem like the prosecution has no case and only did this out of fear. And so we have a couple days of analysis from Andrew Branca. He's a great legal mind. He writes for Legal Insurrection, and we followed his coverage and his opinions pertaining to Derek Chauvin. Now, I respect his opinion. Ultimately, he said, I believe, I could be wrong. He said that Chauvin should have gotten acquitted, but ultimately Chauvin was convicted. Why? Well, this is why I said I thought Kyle Rittenhouse was going to get life in prison, and I've said it a lot, but I'm changing my mind. I figure that people are going to cave like cowards because people, well, look, let's just be real. People on the right tend to be cowards. They might be smarter, some people on the right than many on the left. But at least people on the left have that emotion behind them. Yeah, I know. Yep, that's just reality. You get a bunch of conservative thinkers. They're smart. They're analytical. They check their facts. Great. But they don't have the rage behind them, and many of the people on the right are more than willing to back away and not stand up for what needs to be stood for. Case in point, there was apparently a juror during jury selection who said that they would not be impartial because they believe in the Second Amendment. Wow. When I saw that, I'm just like, the right deserves to lose. I mean, look, it might not be good. It might not be correct or just, but if you are a collection of people who say, I will not stand for myself, well, then you deserve to lose. It's like all the people who kept saying to me, I will not stand up for my children because then I put their food at risk. And now we're in like hyperinflation, food shortages. How is that working out for you? But I get it. It's not easy. I just don't expect life to be easy. Let me tell you about what's going on with some. We've got excellent breakdown here from Andrew Branca, as I mentioned, over at Legal Insurrection. But I genuinely believe so far it looks like Rittenhouse is absolutely winning. And there's some really interesting points brought up by Andrew Branca. Now, first, we have two stories here. Testimony day one. Defense dominates opening statements and first witness testimony. This is huge news as to why already, just to start, the prosecution in the Rittenhouse case is freaking out. And then we have this. Rittenhouse trial day two. Prosecution witnesses still fail to contradict self-defense. So let me give you the elevator pitch real quick, and then we'll talk about what's going on culturally and how this will impact everybody. What we have is, in the opening statements, the prosecution gave an emotive speech. Oh, these people and that people and, all this and all that. Okay. For the defense, they said it was self-defense and here's evidence. Now, the prosecution apparently was like, whoa, Your Honor, I didn't use any exhibits. They shouldn't be allowed to. And the judge was like, what? That's ridiculous. If they want to have an opening statement where they show the snippets of the evidence, the exhibits, then so be it. In which case, what ended up happening was, in the opening statements, the state came out and just said, we feel. And the defense said, here's video evidence proving self-defense. I was impressed. Now, as for day two, it appears that, we'll read into the analysis, but there's an interesting point brought up by Branca that it seems like the police and the state may have been planning to throw this from the get-go, which would make this either malicious or an unjust prosecution. The city is trying to save itself from riots. So they put Kyle Rittenhouse on trial, knowing full well this will not go anywhere. We'll talk about that. But I want to start with this scumbag, Dominick Black. This, my friends, should be in the dictionary next to coward, spineless, pathetic loser. I was so offended watching Dominick Black's testimony. I feel this dude should get locked up for the max, 12 years. I hope the state throws the book at this guy. Let me explain. Meet Dominick Black. He said Kyle Rittenhouse was his brother. They were brothers. Not really, just really good friends. Dominick Black provided the AR-15 to Kyle Rittenhouse. Now he's saying, well, he stole it. He stole it from my dad. This is a piece of garbage. This guy is a piece of garbage. Dominick, you're trash. And I hope you go to prison for a long time. You don't deserve the support of anybody. After what I heard, let me tell you. Here's the story. Dominick and Rittenhouse go to his house. They go into the basement and they get some rifles. They leave. Sounds a whole lot like Dominick Black was the one who said, Kyle, here's a weapon. Why, he had one to protect himself with, and he let Kyle take one as well. Now, he's being charged with providing the weapon to Kyle Rittenhouse. He testified that Kyle stole it, that he took it without his permission. Though on cross-examination, the defense said, did you object? Did you say anything? And he said, no. And as it turns out, what may be one of the most disgusting and despicable things we've heard so far from someone who claims to be a friend, from someone who's supposed to be an upstanding member of his community, standing up for what he believes in. We learned, the defense asked, you have agreed to testify because you are hoping the prosecutor will not send you to prison if you testify against Kyle. And Dominick was like, that is correct. And now I think y'all agree with me, right? I will not tolerate that kind of spineless, sniveling, pathetic behavior. Now, look, I don't know these guys. I don't live there, so it's just my opinion. But think about your willingness to sell out your brother out of a fear of the state sending you to prison. What have we become? I mean, I grew up thinking that we were a country of people who would, man, Steve Rogers, Marvel movies, not real life, I know, but still something to aspire to be. That scene when Tommy Lee Jones pulls the pin on the fake grenade and throws it, and then everyone runs away and Steve Rogers jumps on it and says, get away, thinking that he would jump on this and save everybody. It was an amazing scene. That's the kind of stuff that inspires me. And unfortunately, it's just not real life. When, what was the doctor's name? Erkson or whatever. And he's like, we need someone of good moral character. And Tommy Lee is like, no, we need someone strong. And he pulls it and throws it. And Steve Rogers jumps on the grenade. We write stories like that because we're inspired by sacrifice, by someone willing to say, I will not send someone else to the gulag in my stead. And I will not back off from my principles. What do we get with this guy? So he gives Kyle Rittenhouse a gun. And then when the state is like, that was illegal, he goes, I'll do anything, please. Throw Kyle in prison, not me. He's the one who had the gun. What a pathetic piece of garbage. Really amazing stuff. Now they go on. Let me jump through this real quick. Bronco writes about how the defense argues jury instruction on recklessness. There's some interesting things there. The defense was telling the judge that if Kyle Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense, then the recklessness charge should not exist. Like, it should not be considered. Basically, if the jury determines self-defense is true, then reckless disregard should not apply. The judge disagreed, and the judge said, and I disagree with the judge, but here's what the judge said. If someone's attacking you and you're in fear for your life, so you draw your weapon and aim it at this man, but behind him are 4 children, you are creating, that is reckless endangerment. You are creating a harm for the people behind him. And I think from a very logical point of view, that is absolutely correct. But I also think that it's hard to fault someone criminally because someone in front of them is threatening their life. How are you supposed to, in the heat of the moment, when someone's chasing after you and trying to grab your weapon, you turn around, a split second, you have no time to assess anything other than the guy's lunging at you and you fire, and now you're in trouble because other people were around as well? I do get the judge's point. I really do. You can't just fire willy-nilly. And so his point ultimately was the jury will decide that. And so I get it. I understand ultimately. He goes on to say the judge has instructed the jury on criminal charges. ADA Binger presents, or Binger, however you pronounce it, the opening case. And then we had this big argument about, using evidence and exhibits in the opening statements. Now we get to Dominick Black, the guy I just ragged on for several minutes. They say, on cross-examination, Attorney Richards had Black concede that he was currently being charged with 2 counts of having provided Kyle with the rifle, that each count was good for 6 years if convicted, and that it was ADA Binger himself who had charged and was prosecuting Black. Further, although Black's trial had been set for some months ago, Binger had arranged for the trial to be delayed until after Black had testified against Kyle. He also had Black concede that he certainly hoped Binger would go easy on him in his own case, given his testimony in his trial. Although both Black and the state would deny that any deals had been made, the coercion present was palpable. On the issue of the supposed plans by Kyle to flee, that was, so that's another issue. Think about that. Think about the kind of person that would say, this person is my brother. I want them to be safe during riots. Here's a weapon. And then when the state comes here, they go, throw him in the gulag. I'll do anything you say. I'd give him the middle finger. I would give him the middle. I'd say, you want to come after me? You want to come after me? Fine. I'll tell you what. You come after me, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to testify 10 times as hard or whatever. Not that you actually can. But I will make sure I will do everything in my power to support Kyle, if that were me. I went through something similar because, I told the story before that I was on, me and my brother had been on trial for disorderly. My brother was charged with disorderly and assault. I was charged with disorderly. And it was a false charge. It was a completely fabricated charge. Some security guards, got a report. They saw us, assumed we were the people. We weren't, so they just started attacking us. And then when they realized they got the wrong guys and were for some very serious civil penalties, they made up fake charges, and the cops went along with it. When we finally, after several court appearances, we were offered community service. But because my brother was facing 6 months with assault and I was facing 30 days, I said, I'm going to go to trial. And we don't want Chris to get, 6 months, so he should take the deal. The deal was 20 hours of community service at our own discretion, which meant you literally just sign a paper saying you're done at your own discretion. No sign off, just, hey, we're done, bye. They considered a slap on the wrist. So when our lawyer informed the judge and the DA that I was going to trial, the prosecutor visibly exclaimed, "What?" And the judge was like, whoa, calm down. And so then when our attorney came back over and said to both of us, my brother was like, "Why is she yelling?" And he's like, "Well, she's upset that, Tim's going to trial with this because they effectively gave you a slap on the wrist to walk." And my brother was like, "Screw her, I'm going to trial now too." See, that's the kind of attitude we have. You want to screw with us? You only make it worse for yourself. You want to negotiate? You want to be reasonable? We are reasonable people. You want to start a fight? You get a fight. This dude is a loser who would sell out his own brother because he's scared. Pathetic. And it's people like him as to why the right deserves to lose. Because if the right is nothing but people like this guy, then y'all will be rotting away. Which brings me to the next bit here. Rittenhouse trial day 2, and it's ongoing. This is going to be interesting. There's a lot of news happening, so people are, there's a lot of news happening. We'll put it that way. Check this out. Bronca writes something interesting. He says, did ADA Binger conspire an unjust prosecution from the start? He says, I must confess, and this is probably some kind of reverse ageism on my part, but the moment I saw Detective Martin Howard seated in the witness stand, I thought to myself, holy cow, that guy looks like he's 12. And here's the image of the guy. He doesn't look 12, but he does look very young. He says, this apparent youth made a lot more sense when ADA Binger asked Howard how long he'd been a detective, and the answer was almost 3 years. But that also raised questions in my mind. Wait a minute. The events at the center of this trial occurred 15 months ago. That means that at the time of this event, the Kenosha Police Department assigned to what was sure to be one of the highest profile cases of its history to a detective with fewer than 21 months in that investigatory position. A year? Just almost a year and a half or so? Just almost not even 2 years? Wow. That seemed well odd. Were there no other senior detectives take the lead on this high-profile case that would be sure to attract national, if not international, attention? That background on how it happened as 88 Binger was having him introduce himself to the jury. However, as curious as it was to have a detective of such a limited experience given such a high-profile case, things got even more curious when defense attorney Mark Richards got a hold of Howard on cross-examination. Here we go. Apparently, Howard violated a number of the department's normal investigative practices with respect to the case. It's amazing. While being in unusually close and improper communication with 88 Binger himself, and, remarkably, shortly thereafter getting the plum assignment for such an inexperienced detective of being assigned to the lead investigator on the Rittenhouse case. Let's take a closer look at how attorney Richards began to expose what the defense suggests is foul stench. Richards noted that the investigation had collected a lot of information for the case from people's cell phones, particularly photos, videos, social media, texts, even phone calls. In fact, the investigation was pretty firm about getting that phone data from involved parties, as they normally would be in a homicide investigation. Basically, people were brought in for questioning, and when they arrived, they were told they could either provide consent to have their phone downloaded, or they could compel the police to get a search warrant and crack the phone. But in any case, they were not leaving with the phone until its data had been downloaded by the police. Apparently, some phones were downloaded with consent and some with warrants, but 2 phones in particular had interesting twists in how they were handled: the phone of Rittenhouse and the phone of Gage Grosskreutz. In the case of Rittenhouse, the police simply seized his phone. He was, after all, a criminal suspect. It turned out, however, the phone could not be cracked by the Kenosha PD. Well, that's fine, they thought. We'll just send it off to the FBI. It turned out the FBI also lacked the ability to crack Kyle's phone. Wow, that's amazing. That means that if Kyle had wished, he could have denied consent to download his phone, and the police would have been unable to access the data even with a valid search warrant. Interestingly, because they had no technological means to crack the phone. So if there was anything Kyle had to hide on his phone, he could have done so, and there would have been nothing that the investigators could have done about it. When this came to the attention of Kyle's attorneys, they consulted with their client and made an offer to the police. They'd simply provide the police the passcode to unlock the phone already in possession, granting them unlimited access to its data. And all they asked in return was a copy of data for themselves. And that's what happened. That's amazing. Things went differently when it came to Gage Grosskreutz. This is the guy whose arm was blown off. In prep for an in-person meeting, his lawyer and reps from the DA's office, the police investigators obtained a search warrant. Their standard practice was always to gather up phones from people involved in an investigation, download the data. With the search warrant in hand, about which the Grosskreutz lawyer could have done nothing, they were prepared to do with the Grosskreutz phone what they'd done with every other phone. Despite having the warrant in hand, however, and having his cell phone both present at the meeting, the investigators ended up not serving that warrant, not seizing his phone, and not downloading the contents. Not only was Grosskreutz the only person of interest to the investigation who did not have his phone downloaded, he was the only person in Detective Howard's experience of any Kenosha PD investigation ever where a search warrant for a phone was not served. Sound fishy? Ever, they say. So an exceptional breach of standard investigative procedure, indeed. When Richards asked Detective Howard why the search warrant had not been served, the response was that concerns had been raised about Marsy's Law. Marsy's Law is often referred to a crime victims' rights law. It provides privileges to crime victims, such as notification of criminal proceedings, including any plea bargain, trial sentencing, and parole of the criminal who victimized them. More relevant here, it also includes provisions to protect the privacy of crime victims. Here, apparently, it was decided to characterize Grosskreutz as a victim, and second, use that status and its privilege of privacy to excuse him from having his phone subject to a search. He was armed. He approached Rittenhouse armed. They're defending his data. This is an Antifa guy who had posted how he wished he unloaded into Rittenhouse. They had a warrant. They did not serve it. This is amazing. Very, very amazing. It's crazy. They go on to say, one might begin to imagine the 88 Binger's concerns about the law and yada yada. Did they interview Gage Grosskreutz? Was it recorded? No. And Grosskreutz wasn't the only witness to get specialized treatment. So I don't want to make this video forever, make it last forever. The point is, it seems like there was incompetence, malice. It seems like they know they have no case. And so the only thing they can do is frame everything politically. How can we make him look bad? Let's frame this Gage guy as a victim. Was he a victim? Well, you want to engage in combat with a weapon. I wouldn't call that person a victim. But they're framing him absolutely in that way. They have, I think, I'll throw it to Destiny, the leftist commentator, the clearest cut case of self-defense I've ever seen. And everybody knows it. The left just doesn't care. They want to win. That's all they want. They want to win, regardless of what is right or just. I don't think what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse was right. I don't think it was just. I think it's unfortunate, and these things happen. There's a lot of people who have said he's a hero for standing up for his community. And I say to myself, you got to understand, look, I wouldn't say hero. I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people have criticized me for saying that I would, because I wouldn't say it. But Kyle, I think, is a good kid. I think he's a good kid who is trying to do right. But there's a lot of things that I think it's a fine line. I'll put it that way. But hero, I don't say is the right word, because these are just unfortunate circumstances that shouldn't have happened. I guess it's tough. I guess, when you view it from the lens of the police weren't doing anything, people had been injured, buildings were being ransacked, and this kid said, I'm going to do whatever I have to do, people would say, that was heroic. I just think, I don't know. I understand why he went out with the weapon. I think humans, I think even children have a right to keep and bear arms. Oh, I love it, right? Where's the media, the leftist media now say, oh, Tim's crazy. Did the Second Amendment apply to children? The answer is yes. When somebody had a farm back during the time of the Second Amendment of the Constitution, do you think that they would be like, oh, son, you're 17 years old and we're dealing with a threat to our family. You can't have this weapon. No. They'd be like, you're 12, son. You're nearly a man. Go stop that wolf or something. Not really. You get the point. They'd be like, take the weapon and go stop the fox from getting in the hen house. That doesn't mean Kyle Rittenhouse should have been out there with the weapon. As much as there were problems down there, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. I don't think that Kyle was wrong to defend himself. I don't think he was wrong to keep and bear arms. I just think there's a big difference between being like, I'm going to go out and provide medical assistance to rioters and that. Actually, you know what? I should stop. I think when you take everything into consideration, Kyle was acting heroically. And what I mean by that was going out and wanting to provide aid to rioters, putting out the fire from those rioters, that was all heroic. I don't think fleeing, actually, no, I think fleeing was heroic too. And then I think what happened with the shooting was horrifying. Everybody, it's not so simple. A lot of people, I don't know, man. I just don't have it in me to say, like, these are tough circumstances. I think the violence is all wrong, It's a challenge because I look at like what are we supposed to do when people are burning down buildings and smashing windows and pushing dumpsters into gas stations? And it's like, that's all wrong. And then defending yourself isn't. What else can be said? I think Kyle's going to win. I didn't think so before, but I'm starting to lean that way now. It all depends on what happens. Will there be riots? It's happening in winter. This is very, very beneficial to the defense. Rioters ain't going to come out when it's cold in Wisconsin. And if the rioters don't come out, the jurors will be fine. And if the jurors feel fine, Kyle Rittenhouse is going to walk. We'll see how it plays out. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.